Hello again to all my listeners tuning in. Welcome to Fractured Poet, a podcast for all of you poetically insane individuals who love getting lost in the art of poetry. Podcasting from Ontario, California, I am your host, Katrina Wisniewski, just another person in the world, obsessed with words, striving to make sense of it all. Today's episode is going to be filled with nothing but random poetry. Some of the poems I am going to read might have some relevance to my life, others may not. I tried to keep all of my poems categorized, but these ones, I wasn't really sure where to put them and where they belonged. Maybe they are just a bunch of misfits. But without further ado, the first poem I will read to you is called Tell Me. Tell me something I don't know. Enlighten me with your motives. Intrigue me with your elusive charm. Tell me something that I crave. Make it sound enticing and seductive. Tell me a story that's never been told. A story with no plot and a tragic ending. Tell me something nobody knows. Perhaps a dark secret that holds your most desirable thoughts captive. Tell me what you want most. Alright, so this poem does not have any pull on anyone in particular, as the title of this episode is just a bunch of randomness. I honestly don't know where this one came from. I actually kind of like this poem. It gives off a I'm interested, but I don't want to make it obvious type of tone. And can't really say much about this poem. I think I will move on to the next one. So, the next poem I am going to read does not have a title, and it is extremely short. I almost knew what it was like to look into your eyes and fall in love. As I said, this poem was extremely short. To know where it came from, I don't know. Honestly, I thought I was going to add more at some point or another, but turned out that I liked it the way that it was. So I didn't feel the need to add anything else. Considering what this poem is talking about, there isn't a point to add more, but there is nothing else to talk about. Did that even make sense? Oi, whatever. Moving on. This next poem, I believe, fits the small tangent I just had. To understand the insanity that brews within me, a thought equivalent to a feline chasing its tail. To recite the madness that creeps into my thoughts, a story meant for campfire tales. I can't always explain the thoughts that are rummaging in my head, especially when it comes out in poetry form. I don't know where my thoughts come from or even know where the words or phrases I think of come from. They are just there. As the poem said, to understand the insanity that brews within me is a thought equivalent to a feline chasing its tail. No one really knows why a cat chases its own tail. There could be many reasons why, but who really knows? I feel the same way about the thoughts that brew inside my head. I often question how any of these thoughts are turned into poetry. What does any of it mean? Definitely a story to be told by a campfire, don't you think? Moving on. This is another poem with no title. It is almost surreal, like a dream bound to be interrupted. A place she used to call her home is now a thing of the past. Moving on to someplace new, it is time for a change. I wrote this poem in June of 2017. If I remember correctly, this was about a month or so before I moved out of a place I was living for over 8 years. But that move turned out to be a complete nightmare from hell. So, someplace new and a change was not what I expected it to be. But that's a conversation meant for another time. On to the next. The glass has shattered, too many pieces to count, as I make my way to the end. Shards of glass pierce the soles of my feet. This feeling is unbearable, yet so satisfying. The blood runs deep. There's so much blood. Holding my breath long enough to keep the pain inside. getting lightheaded. My vision goes black. I guess this is the end. Morbid would probably be the word to describe this poem. Sorry if it's TMI or gruesome for some of you, but as I've said, the things that come out of my head are things I cannot always explain. This does not have any relevance to my personal life. Again, just some shit I had in my head, and I wrote it out on paper. Now for the last poem. This one is called Can't Imagine. I can't imagine being surrounded by people who cannot stand the sight of me, crowded by the very people who speak only words of disdain, individuals who are too fake to tell the difference between reality and make-believe. I can't imagine forcing myself to mingle and associate with people who talk so negatively behind my back. This, you see, would be completely absurd. I like to consider this poem a personal wake-up call. I literally just laid out that I am knowingly surrounding myself with toxic people, people that should not matter to me anymore, people that have done nothing but betray me, chewed me to pieces, and spit me out many times over. I wrote a poem that described every decision I made to keep certain people in my life that are nothing but toxic. To live a life where I surround myself with people who could more than likely care less about me is absurd. To be in a room with those individuals, knowing and feeling the insincere, just free flowing off of their pointless little bodies is sickening. So you see, this poem clearly has some personal ties to me. It's not always a good moment to reflect when you stumble upon poems that force you to relive an emotion, a feeling, a memory, or a thought. But it is what it is, as some people say. So, with that being told, I am afraid that concludes the show. To those of you who are always tuning in, a huge freaking thank you. And even those who are just joining in, I hope you liked what you heard and tune in next time. You can catch this and future episodes at anchor.fm/Fractured Poet. This episode of Fractured Poet was written and produced by me, Katrina Wisniewski. Music by Alternative Rock Volume 1 and Rock Electronica Volume 4 from freeplaymusic.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Fractured Poet. And as always, thanks for listening, and until next time.